Hey everyone, I'm David Benitez and this is Extreme Vocal Institute. And today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the top 5 worst habits that I see in metal vocalists today. Number 5 is hydration. So I see a lot of people, not even just singers, but people in general all over the place not drinking enough water on a regular basis. And if you're not careful about your water intake, this can cause a lot of problems, not just with your vocalizing, but with your day-to-day life as well. For starters, the human body needs water in order to create energy and to give all of the different parts of your body energy. And especially when you're a vocalist, similarly to an athlete, you burn through an awful lot of energy when you're up there doing your thing, when you're at a practice, in the studio, on stage. You're burning through a lot of energy. And it's very important to be replenishing your resources as you're going through these types of activities. So upping your water intake is only something that will benefit you for those reasons. On top of that, the different muscles in the body will only function properly if there's enough water in your system as well. Because like similarly to when you wake up in the morning and you haven't been drinking water in your sleep, so the body is all achy and creaky, and when you wake up, everything's very depleted. The cells in your body, all the cells in your body are very much depleted when you wake up, and you wake up all dehydrated. And as you wake up and rehydrate, all of the cells in the body start to fill up again, and that's when you notice movement isn't difficult anymore and your voice starts to work a little more properly after the first hour or so of being awake as well. And you'll notice that you're able to just go about your day as normal without feeling the effects of being kind of groggy and tired and dehydrated. So you want to make sure all those cells are nice and full again, not depleted, to be able to go through all the right types of motions and have all of these structures in the throat actually be responding appropriately to what you're trying to do. And the biggest thing about this is that it doesn't stop at just being a vocalist. Anyone out there watching this can benefit from drinking more water, and it's very important, again, for all of the reasons I've said, to be upping your water intake and to be making sure that you have enough energy and you have enough fuel to be able to get through your day and replenish all of these resources and to be able to function healthily. Number 4, bad mic technique. You see it all over the place. You see it at every show, in every video, in every photo. Especially nowadays, it's unavoidable. Mic cupping. I'm not going to call out anyone specifically on this, but what I will say is that most people don't realize that all of these different microphone angles that people are using and all these different mic cupping things people are doing are not really based on anything, and they're not based on anything positive either. Because all you're doing is taking away from the amount of sound that you're able to produce live, and you're only taking away from the experience, and you're only making it so you have to work harder to get the initial sounds you're trying to get out and have them translate over appropriately in a live setting or in a recording setting in some situations. Now, you'll see a lot of very odd angles. You'll see either single hand in multiple places or like the double hand kind of thing as well. Very often you'll see people kind of pulling away a little too far or being much too close at all times proximity-wise. You want to take the time on your own with whatever equipment you have microphone-wise to feel out what angles make the most sense for capturing sound. More often than not, you want that 45-degree angle so that you're catching everything coming out of the face. Now, the higher up you are, you're going to get a brighter sound because you're getting more of what's coming out of the nasal cavity. And the further down you go, you're going to get more of a darker, more chestier sound because you're starting to point away from all of the brightness up here. Now, apart from that, you don't want to be holding the microphone sideways or straight up and down or way too far away or right on your face as well, because you want to make sure that you're able to keep the sound nice and clear. What happens when you kind of mess with these things is you start to create negative distortion. If you're rehearsing on your own with your own band, or just when you're practicing by yourself, if you have your own equipment and are able to do this, you'll notice that as you're like cupping the microphone or playing with all these different angles, that there's a lot of various like sounds and hisses and bits of clipping and distortion here and there that are added to the sound that might sound really big and exciting in the moment, but all of these are only happening because of these inappropriate angles that you're creating and all of these different ways that you're blocking the equipment from picking up your sound. And what happens a lot of times is people begin to rely on this type of negative distortion in all settings. And when you take that distortion away, like when you're a vocalist that performs like this and practices like this, and then you're trying to practice on your own without a microphone and without music, it becomes very challenging to get these sounds out because you're so accustomed to these background noises and so accustomed to this negative distortion that making the sound by itself stops making sense, and then it becomes harder and harder to do. And that's when people normally then work harder to get the sounds out in general, and that's where it becomes easy for people to hurt themselves when they're practicing. So it's best to try and ease away from these kinds of things for those reasons. And on top of that, you're only causing more problems in a live setting. I would say 50 times out of 10, when you're having problems with your equipment and with sound, either at rehearsal or on stage, with your vocal performance, it is going to be because of improper mic technique. Whoever your front of house is, no matter what you're doing, if it's a house person or your own person, will love you that much more if you're able to get your hands away from the grill and give them a nice, full, open, and clean signal for them to work with so that everybody involved can do their job more appropriately. And everything you're doing will be nice and clear. You'll be able to hear yourself that much more appropriately, have more control over everything you're doing because of that, and then everyone in your audience will be able to tell all of the work you're doing and have everything translate over to them exactly the way you want it to. So for all of those reasons, just get your hands away from there and work on holding the microphone by the handle, and I promise that over time, as that becomes comfortable, you'll be able to start to hear, see, and feel the benefits. I'm going to be making many more videos about just this topic alone because we're only hitting the tip of the iceberg with this topic, so definitely be on the lookout for things like that. Not warming up. That's number 3. More often than not, more often than you would think, a lot of people get up on stage or go into practice or run into the vocal booth head first without any sort of prep work and without any sort of warm-up of any kind. Now, this is definitely detrimental to your vocal health for a multitude of reasons, but one of the biggest things is you don't want to just use that first song as your warm-up to kind of just loosen up and get into it for a few reasons. One, people can tell when you're doing that. Even if you think that that's like the best way to kind of ease your way into it because it feels more comfortable during a song, you're sacrificing your own performance to be able to get to that point. So you don't want to take away from that kind of experience, both for yourself, for the rest of the people that work with you, and for your audience as well. So don't use that first song in the set or at practice to be your warm-up. You want to make sure that you can manage your time appropriately and allot yourself the right amount of that to be able to get in a proper warm-up. And as I talk about very, very often, you want to incorporate a lot of melodic warming up into what you do, even if you don't sing in your set or in your music or what have you, because everything is pitch-based. With metal vocals, to a degree, you need to have full control and dexterity over those areas of your voice to be able to then fully utilize everything that you're trying to do in all of these different vocal settings. So you want to manage your time more appropriately and make sure that you vocalize and warm up before the busy period of your day vocally, which is usually the performance or what have you. And the number one thing about that is that injury is only a matter of time if you aren't warming up, because the body isn't prepared for the work that you're going to be doing. For example, if you're a marathon runner, you don't just get out of bed the day of and run a marathon without any prep work. There's a lot that goes into that first. There's a lot of warming up on that day of, but there's also a lot of routine maintenance that goes into that. There's training yourself up to be able to do that in the first place. There's regular routine work that's done to make sure that those parts of your body are fully optimized to be able to do and carry the workload that you are putting yourself through. Again, like I say all the time, your body is your instrument, and it's very important and very necessary to take care of it. Breathing, breath control, your ability to breathe in general, that's number two, because so often when I work with people, especially one-on-one, one of the first things I notice is their inability to breathe and their inability to breathe fully. If you're breathing at home, like all of you at home watching this right now, take as deep a breath as you can right now. Go. When you're doing that, you can breathe out now. When you're doing that, if your ears are kind of touching your shoulders, if this is kind of happening, you want to be able to relax your body enough to the point where that stops happening and loosen all these different muscles so that everything that's incorporated for a nice, full, healthy breath can actually move and expand appropriately. So when you take a deep breath, you want to feel everything expand nice and wide and nice and full and nice and calm as well. You don't want to feel a whole lot of resistance when you're breathing. And most people do. Because of the way society is today, there's an awful lot of sitting incorporated into our day-to-day lives, and that's made people develop this kind of very coarse, very shallow breath. And this has to do with posture as well. You want to make sure your posture is also appropriate when you're performing and then also in your day-to-day life to make sure that breathing is optimized. There's so much of modern stage presence nowadays that involves a lot of different contorting and very detrimental angles created with the spine and the upper and lower body for performance purposes, and it really gets in the way of your ability to breathe properly and to be able to vocalize in a functional and safe way. Your breathing is the foundation for your sound. It all starts there, because without enough gas in the tank, you're not really going to be able to get very far. Your air pressure control is responsible for making sound in the body and being able to assist in the creation of all of these different sounds that we're going for as metal vocalists. And your ability to even balance the amount of pressure you're using or not using at any given moment is reliant on your ability to breathe first. No matter what level you're at, whether you're just starting out or if you have years and years and years of touring experience under your belt, it is never a bad time and you're never too old to start working on breathing or to start working on breathing again, because there is so much that can go wrong with this stuff in terms of injury yet again. The number one cause of injury with not even just metal vocalists, but vocalists in general, is the misuse of air, and more specifically, the overuse of air, which leads to my last and final bad habit for vocalists. And the number one worst bad habit that I see in vocalists today is pushing. There's so much excessive pushing in vocalists today, and there's so much of that pushing done in all instances of vocals, and that's not limited to metal vocalists either. But specifically to metal vocalists and people just starting out, whether they're just starting out now or 5, 10, 20 years ago, whenever, there has been a lot of misinformation out there about these types of vocals and what it takes to actually get them out. And I've heard a lot of people say that it requires a really intense, huge amount of push, almost to the point where you're lifting off like a rocket to be able to get these sounds out, and that's just absolutely not the case. Like any other vocal style, when done appropriately and safely, it's always about the balance between the maximum amount of output and sound and tone with the minimum amount of work and effort to get there, and always balancing those two things so you're never working too hard to get to your end result, because that's how you end up fighting yourself just to make sound. Because of this, a lot of people out there did start out, myself included, by pushing too hard to get these sounds out, and pushing too hard in all instances, especially in a live setting. And because of that, you'll feel yourself start out okay, but throughout the course of your, sometimes like maybe like only like a half-hour long set, you'll feel your ability to make sound dwindle and decrease over the course of that period of time, because your body becomes so tired so quick from being constantly at war with itself because of this severe imbalance that you're creating within yourself. So you really want to avoid the overuse of air and all of that pushing for that reason. Another reason this exists today is because of the big misconception there is about volume. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room in order to be good at what you do. You don't have to have the loudest scream out of anybody to be considered a good metal vocalist. It's not about how loud you are, it's not about volume, it's about tone, and it's about consistency. And again, it leads back to your ability to balance. And lastly, the number one cause of injury in vocalists, and metal vocalists specifically, is the overuse of air. When you do blow out your voice, what's happening is your body is creating so much force, and the diaphragm is capable of implementing so many like cubic feet of pressure that the very tiny, delicate little muscles that are responsible for sound creation in the throat are overpowered and then forced apart. And this leads to a lot of friction and a lot of very, very injury-provoking things, and then bruising, and then lesions being created as well at the extreme end of things. And that's where these types of injuries come from, the overuse of air, due to all of the misinformation that's been out there and people thinking that they need to push harder or be louder or feel more going on in order for what they're doing to be considered correct or to be feeling it happening the right way. When really, it's all about scaling back and, like I keep saying, balance. So quick recap. Number 5, hydration. Please drink more water. Everyone watching this, go and get a glass of water right now. Number 4, bad mic technique. Spend time with your equipment and understand how to get your hands away from the grill and really listen to the full amount of sound you're able to create. If you're happy with it, great. If you're not, change the way you're doing it to the point where you are happy with it. Number 3, not warming up. Make sure you give yourself enough time to warm up at shows, at practice, in the studio, anywhere you're going to be vocalizing, and make sure that you're using the right types of warm-ups to prepare yourself for the amount of work you're going to be doing as a vocalist. Number 2, breathing, making sure that you're taking advantage of the full capacity that you're able to breathe and create that nice, stable, healthy, and necessary foundation for creating vocals. And number 1, pushing. Don't work too hard to get any one sound out. Thanks for watching, and once again, scream responsibly.